I am going to get started just on introductions. So, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. We have a great panel, and we're so lucky to have the three gentlemen next to me. I feel so honored. I've come from film, but not, well, I came from movies and video, but never shot on film video. So I'm really inspired to be here and talk with you guys and learn about your journey. And I just want to let you guys give your own introduction, and because you'll say it better than I will. And let's start with you.
Oh, okay. I'm Rob Draper. I'm a director of photography, and I've been a director of photography now for 47 years. Started as a news cameraman shooting stringer work on 16mm black and white in a little town called Wagga Wagga in Australia, and progressed up through the ranks through documentaries, commercials, and eventually made a move over here to the United States, where I moved into narrative work, doing TV series, mini-series, feature films, and television commercials. I've gone through the whole gamut, for going from 16mm black and white to 16mm colour, 16mm colour single system, into 35mm. I was part of the ENG transformation back in the 70s, shooting on the TK-76, which some of you may or may not know, and then moving through 35mm up to working with Sony on development of the HD cam, Panasonic with the Vericam, Arriflex with the D20, D21, and now into digital. So I've sort of seen a lot of changes over those 47 years, and for a large chunk of those 47 years, I've worked with these two blokes here.
I'm John Harrison. I'm a filmmaker, writer, director, and I'm kind of the outlier of the group because I'm not I'm behind the camera, but I'm not a hardware guy at all. So I've relied on these two guys through most of my career to help me get it done. I started in Pittsburgh as an independent filmmaker with my dear friend and mentor, George Romero, who was the creator of the entire zombie mythology. And he and I worked together for a number of years before I ended up striking out on my own. And like Rob, I've come up through 16mm, 35mm into the digital age. Have directed a lot of television, a lot of features, some mini-series like the one on the screen there, which I did with Vittorio Storaro, Frank Herbert's Dune. I did a great movie with Paramount, Tales from the Dark Side, the movie with these two guys. I'm doing Creepshow series with him now. So I've kind of run the gamut myself. I've worked with Clive Barker and a number of people. So I guess you'd say my career has kind of traversed the sort of horror suspense genre. But I've been lucky because I've been working constantly through most of my career, and I've seen a lot of changes over all those years.
If my microphone works?
I think it does, yeah.
My name is Harry Miller. I am a editor for film and television. I also do large format films and documentaries. I've done a lot of 3D, IMAX presentation films. I started at USC Cinema in the early 80s, and have worked pretty consistently between being a picture editor and sound editor. I've rotated between the two occupations. I worked on Miami Vice, the original TV series, as a sound editor for a couple of years, until I couldn't take it anymore. And then I have also, in USC Cinema, we started in 16mm black and white, non-sync sound. Film couldn't die fast enough for me. The handful of directors that cling on to film, good for them. They keep one lab alive, and they keep Kodak on their last legs. But once we changed to digital, my life got so much easier. And I think the first major project that I did that was totally digital was the sequel to Dune, Children of Dune, which was also shot in Prague, directed by Greg Yatanis and executive produced by John Harris. Sort of recently, I did the feature film The Predator for Shane Black as the writer-director, which was a fantastic experience, both working with Shane and working with another really great editor, Billy Weber. And then more recently, I've been doing a lot of episodic television. I just finished editing the season 3 of La Brea, which is a NBC show, which is kind of Land of the Lost meets Lost. And my joke is, people, you meet this family, they're on La Brea Boulevard, a sinkhole opens and they find themselves in 10,000 BC. But why? Because, well, why not? Well, that's the premise of the show.
Awesome. So as you can see, there's a lot of years of experience, a lot of cool stories. I know that we could be here for like 4 hours talking about some funny stories, especially you three working together.
So I hope there's a good editor on this video.
Yeah,
or somewhere.
seriously. So let's start off. Transitioning from film to digital. What was it like? Switching up, you even mentioned all the different tools that you've gone through. What was it like transitioning from that? And even when you started in film and you said you couldn't wait until it ended, did you even see an end to that? Did you think that film would ever die?
Well, what Harry said about it couldn't die soon enough, I don't ever want to shoot on film again. And the reason is that in the digital world, I have so much more control over the image that you just simply don't have in film. And the crazy thing about people shooting in film now is, and we know from shooting television all through the 80s and 90s, you'd shoot on film, but it'd be transferred immediately to tape. So you were in an electronic world anyway, especially for television. So the transition going from film to digital, for me, was really simple because I understood photography. I understood how emulsions worked. I understood latitude. I understood dynamic range. I understood how colors reacted to different sorts of light and to under and overexposure. So it was simply a matter of taking all that knowledge that I'd built up over the years in film, transferring it over to digital, because essentially it's the same thing. And in the early days of HD cam, when Sony was developing the HD cam, I went all over the world really teaching feature film lighting for high definition. And people said, well, how can we make film, how can we make high definition look like film? It's impossible to do. It just looks like video. It's like, no, the way you make it look like film is, what is your impression of film? When people say, I want it to look like film, what do they mean? They mean what they've seen in a cinema, on a screen, and that's a tiny little piece of film about this big, projected through 2 angled pieces of glass, through a lens that's probably dirty, that's not focused properly, through a gate that's flickering because the registration pins aren't properly registered. Then it's beamed across a room onto a screen that's 40 or 50 feet wide, full of holes, got big speakers behind it, and it's vibrating. So what are you looking at? you're looking at the worst possible resolution you could ever imagine. You're not looking at, you know, 4K or 8K or 12K. You're looking at like 1K. Not even that. You're looking at, you know, half a K. You're just looking at terrible resolution. So how do you make video or high definition look like film? You just destroy the image. And just destroy the image as much as you can. Destroy it with lighting, with filtration, with the depth of field that you're shooting at. And the more you can break the image up, the more it will have that sort of aesthetic feel of film, which people are used to seeing in a cinema.
And how has your role changed specifically going from film to digital?
You're not standing in an upright anymore.
I'm not standing in an upright moviola or sitting in a chem anymore. The movie that we started working on together, shot in New York, Tales from the Dark Side, was shot on 35 millimeter, and my team got appointed as being the projectionist for data rooms. And the problem was dragging all that film around. It was just in the next room, but because it wasn't a very clean environment, there was no carpets. Once we finally started to project it, it was all scratched and didn't look very good. And just managing the physical.
Just physically, it didn't look very good. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
physically,
yeah.
not the exposure.
The cinematography was incredible. Yeah.
No, we basically.
Except for the hair in the gate.
we handling film was just a lot of work, and now my job has nothing to do with that. I'm not picking up anything. I'm creating. And not only am I putting the story together with the images that they shot, I get to add music, I get to add sound effects, I get to play around with visual effects where they're needed. We were talking in our green room about, I asked Rob, what do editors do that most drives you crazy? And he told me, well, you tell the story.
Yeah, quite often editors now have especially if they're working in Resolve, have total access to color grading. So all of a sudden the footage that I've shot and sent LUTs in for come back, and the editor's done a little bit of tweaking here and a little bit of tweaking there, and I thought this looked pretty good, and I thought that looked good, and the blacks are a bit too low, so I brought them up, and how do you like that? And it's like, oh, I don't like it at all, that's not what I was after. But that doesn't happen a lot, and it would never happen with Harry. But yeah, the editors have got, the one thing with digital is, as a cinematographer, is you've got to keep really tight control over that image, because it's very easy for it to run away from you. And that's one of the ways it can. And you know, Harry's an editor with a lot of experience, and you know, it would be very rare for him to be sort of tweaking colours and everything without talking to the DP, or at least to the director.
Well, I'll be a bit of a contrarian here, as these guys know. Only because I don't have the technical expertise to say it's easier this way or that way. I can understand everything they're saying because it's all true. I remember working in the editing room with Harry, and every time you'd have an outtake, it would be this little, what we used to call trims. And there'd be bins of these things everywhere, and you'd be trying to put things together. And by the time you had a work print, it was spliced so much that the picture would go boom, 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 and you know, trying to watch a movie that way was crazy. But I think that the difference really has come with digital technology. It requires somebody with Rob Draper's level of skill or Vittorio Storaro's level of skill in order to paint the picture. Because if you don't really understand lighting, if you don't really understand composition, but I would say primarily lighting and resolution, you know, it's not gonna look that good. And that's not gonna say that it would look better on film, because if you're a lousy lighting technician, it won't look any good on film either. But I think that just because it's quicker and faster and easier to shoot on an iPhone doesn't mean that the picture is going to be better, no matter whether it's 12K resolution. You have to have artistry behind it. And so I think that it behooves anybody that wants to shoot digitally to totally understand lighting and composition, because those are the things that are going to make the picture work, not just because it's faster or it's quicker or all of a sudden I'm shooting in 8K. The same goes a little bit for editing, because one of the things I've heard from editors, including Harry, is that oftentimes the ease with which you can make a cut, sometimes having too many choices is having like no choice. Because when you were cutting on film, you had to really think about the edit you were making. Because if you didn't, you ended up with all these trims and you had to put them back together. So you can, with digital, it's so easy to make a cut. You can have 4 or 5 versions of a scene. So unless you're working with somebody, and I've been lucky because I've had a chance to work with Harry, where he will tell me to shut up because my idea sucks, you know, or we kind of know each other well enough so that the cut, it's actually, there's a thought process behind it. It's just like, well, you know, why don't we cut it this way, just to see what it's like? You know, that to me is not really creative. That's just throwing a bunch of stuff against the wall and seeing if it sticks. So there are really downsides to the ease with which digital technology has given us all these tools. And I think that it's not just technology that makes it work, it's the artistry behind the technology that makes it work.
Oh, can I say something about that?
No.
He's absolutely right.
Okay, you can say as much as you want now.
One of the problems I'm finding as a cinematographer with all the digital technology is, I've got to be careful how I say this. One of the problems is that, to me, everything's starting to look exactly the same. Doesn't matter what movie you look at, they all are starting to look the same. And why is that? The reason is that a lot of the people who are shooting can get into shooting so easily now, and the technology is so good, and the cameras are so good, and they're so forgiving, and you've got so much control in for example, DaVinci Resolve, that you know you can literally get away with murder. And I know I've shot some scenes where I haven't had time to light them, and I've had to take real big risks with exposure to make sure I get the scene and we make the day, because making the day and coming in on budget is more important sometimes than making great shots. And I surprise myself with what the cameras can deliver these days, and I know what I can do in post. So what's happening is a lot of people are going out and everyone's starting to imitate each other. Oh, I love that shot, so I'm going to do that. And what happens is all these films now are being made as a series of fantastic images, and the images are incredible. I mean, I go to the movies now and I see images that just blow me away, but there's no story. And why is there no story? Well, because no one's thought about what lenses are going to be used from shot to shot, scene to scene. No one's thought about the transitions in the lighting. No one's thought about the ebb and flow of the dramatic structure of the story. But they've got an incredible collection of fantastic images. And that to me is the biggest downside of digital from a cinematographer's point of view, is that not enough people are going out and putting their heart into the images, because it's more about who you are and what your point of view of the world is that makes you a good cinematographer. It's not just delivering great images, because sometimes the images don't have to be great. They've just got to be well done. And so, you know, that's carrying on from what John was saying, and I'm sure Harry sort of is seeing the same sort of thing in editing.
Let's take one question from somebody who might have something for any of them. Right here.
Harry, so
Project.
I am using Avid Media Composer, and I started when they were making the transition. There was a lot of different types of software that was developed to try and do things electronically. I worked with montage a little bit. I worked on, I tried out Lucas film had a thing called Edit Droid, which was not very good. But then Avid Media Composer has really taken over the Hollywood film and television business. It is so good at what it does. It has a lot of flaws, and it doesn't do certain things that Resolve does or Premiere Pro does. But overall, it is the lingua franca of the Hollywood community. I've worked with Premiere, and I'd rather work on Media Composer.
Does it integrate better with all the other systems that you have to ultimately sound and mixing and everything else, or is it the best of those, or doesn't it matter?
Well, one of the things about Media Composer is Avid owns Media Composer and Pro Tools.
Oh yeah.
So there is a very good workflow. Some friends of mine worked on Deadpool in the sound department, and that was cut on the first one was cut on Premiere, and they had a very difficult time that the editors would turn over cuts to the sound department. Sound was working with Pro Tools, and because of the way Premiere doesn't enforce that you have to have stereo on stereo tracks or 5-channel. You can put stereo and mono. You can put anything on any track, but when you export it to a Pro Tools session, it creates however many tracks you have for channels, and it gets very confusing, and it doesn't translate the mix and the EQs that the editor's done. So it was really a nightmare for them, and they kept saying, "Oh, we're working on it. We're working on it. Why don't you cut it in the Premiere sound audition?" And they said, "No, we're a film studio. We don't do that." So, yeah, that's what I do.
Cool. Moving on to the next topic, and then save your question for this topic. And you mentioned when cutting back then, when film, you had to be much more intentional on the story you were telling. But now maybe you can have different scenes. How have you felt that your storytelling has evolved, where maybe now you have too many options to tell 4 different types of stories with the same scene? But how has your storytelling evolved?
Well, I think that storytelling is storytelling. So the medium doesn't really, for me as a writer and a director, has not changed in basic ways. The story must survive on its own, no matter what the medium. However, I will say that the effect, and this is not just digital technology, although I think it has a lot to do with it. The overall effect on people's consumption of media has changed to the extent that story has become much faster. Our patience level, our attention level is much shorter. It's a bugaboo of all of ours on this stage about younger filmmakers who don't know film history. A lot of the complaints from those younger filmmakers is, well, they're too slow, or I can't watch black and white, and to me, that's sort of like saying, well, story can only move at a certain pace, and that's the pace of our times. And to me, that's a problem. So I think that I've been influenced by it to the extent that I work for producers and I work for studios, and they expect it to have a certain rhythm and a pace, and how fast can you, an hour of television nowadays is basically only about 38 minutes. The rest of it is all commercials, and you know how fast commercials go. And so when you're watching a drama, a narrative film, your mind becomes acclimated to that kind of pace. That has affected storytelling. So I'm not blaming technology for that, but I'm just saying it's something that I've had to adapt to.
I think, one of the things that drives me crazy is when you see dance sequences in movies now, or on TV, or a music video even. The cuts are so fast that you lose the intent of the dance. The dancing is about movement, and it's about seeing a movement go from beginning to completion. And 9 times out of 10, that movement from beginning to completion in dance sequences might be 8 cuts. And so you lose the entire intent of the dance, and it drives me crazy.
Or the geography of it. Sometimes you can't tell where you are.
So, that to me, that's a drawback of digital. I don't want to sound like I'm down on digital. I love the digital world, and I love working in the digital environment because I've got so much more control. But when John was talking about putting the film together and story and pacing, when we do a show together, even when we're doing Creepshow, we spend so much time talking through the shots, the lenses we're going to use, how we're going to transition from one lens to another, how we're going to transition between scenes. We spend a lot of time working on scene transitions and working out the whole pacing of the film, where we're going to speed up, where we're going to slow down, where the cutting will be fast, where it'll be slow. And we know all that ahead of time. It's not like we suddenly go, hey, Harry, good luck, see what you can get out of this. We've got a pretty good idea of what we want, and then you can hand it over to Harry.
And his artistry kicks in.
Then he starts working on it, and he says, well, I think this might be better, blah, blah, blah. But it's all worked out intentionally ahead of time, rather than being a haphazard collection of shots that we just throw at the editor and say, let's see what we can get.
The difference in working with John and Rob is that they are more intentional filmmakers, whereas they have a lot of design shots. Rob did this really cool shot in Tales from the Dark Side, and guy's telling the story, and there's a wall behind him. You dolly past the guy, and the lighting comes up, and it's a different world. It's a guy driving a car, which is really cool, really intentional. You have to plan that out.
But it's live, it's not an effect.
Right.
We just used a theatrical scrim and took, an old gag where you bring up the light.
So a lot of the shows that I work on now, particularly La Brea, the director of the pilot episode had everything storyboarded out. He had really interesting shots, really good plan, and was an artist and did his own storyboards. And we get into the editing room, and the producers would say, well, why didn't you shoot this? Why didn't you shoot that? Why didn't you shoot that? And it was like, it turned out they didn't want somebody that had that intentional filmmaking sense. They wanted pieces. That's all they wanted. They wanted a lot of pieces. And so by the end, all they were looking for was directors that would shoot. We had one director that would shoot 4 cameras for a dialogue scene. People walking across a parking lot, basically. 4 cameras, and he would, halfway through the scene, he would say, no, let's go back, let's take it from this line, and okay, go. And we would get, for every take, there would be 12, 15-minute takes. So we ended up, this director shot twice as much footage as any other director on the show. But they liked him because he covered everything. And it was just the shotgun method that paid no attention to performance, paid no attention to lighting or any plan. I wrote to the guys, I never said it, but I really wanted to say, have you ever thought about a rehearsal? Maybe if you did it once or twice and everybody knew what they were doing, you wouldn't do it.
I mean, that is, I have to add, and I know we start sounding like a bunch of old farts up here, but there is a thing that technology allows you, just as we were talking about the number of cuts you can do. When you're a director and all you're really concerned about is coverage, there is no intention. All you want to do, if you have enough cameras, just throw them all up there and then hand it off to the editor, as opposed to having a design. So those of you that are in the technology side of it, the editors, the cinematographers, I think it behooves you to think about what Rob was saying, which is like the story in the way you shoot, or the story in the way you cut, as opposed to just a collection of, wow, man, that is a great looking image. We all want great looking images.
Let's take one quick question right back there. Nice and loud.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is it shouldn't just fall on one person to come up with that. Shooting a movie is collaboration, and like I said with John and I, we go when we walk on the set, we know exactly what we're shooting. There is not 1 minute of any day that we don't know exactly what we're going to shoot until we start to run out of time, and then we just shoot whatever's in front of us. But no, I'm joking. But we go in with a really distinct plan. But also, as a cinematographer, you've got to know who you are and what your perspective is and what your point of view is. And when I say your point of view, it's how do you see the world? What do you like? Do you like sunny days, or don't you like sunny days? And if you do like them, why do you like them? If you don't like them, why don't you like them? Do you like Rembrandt, Caravaggio, Bierstadt, Constable, Gainsborough, Hopper? You know. Well, me too. And let me tell you something. I wish I could shoot everything like a Turner painting, where it's just a swirl of colour. There's no shape or form. It's just texture and colour. And if I could shoot everything like that, it would be awesome. But, you know, no one would watch it. So I can't do that. But that's how I would like to shoot it. So I push my cinematography as far towards that as I possibly can. And I do that by shooting shallow depth of field, a lot of filtration, different styles of lighting. So anything I can do to break the image up and to make it look as sort of painterly as I can without it being so abstract that people can't understand what's going on. But I think it's, I know it's a difficult thing, because on one hand you want to be an artist, on the other hand you want to be able to pay the rent.
Yeah, there is a business side of it.
Yeah, so it's a delicate balance, but the great thing is when you find someone, a director like John, who we can sit down, we both go back and we talk about, you know, films that go back into the 40s, and and we love film noir. You know, his first question to me was, the first time we ever spoke, he said, "Do you like film noir?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, man, let's shoot." So we've got a communication history that goes back, and we can talk about films that go back, you know, a long way. And when you've got someone like that, you can take all sorts of risks, and you've got a collaborator who, when people say, you know, we haven't got time for that, the director can sometimes step up and say, well, listen, just give them a few more minutes, you know, you'll get it. So that's what I would work on if I was you, is trying to build the relationships that allow you to have a good creative artistic collaboration, and knowing that you've got to strike that fine balance between being a creative, you know, really creative and pushing the limits, and making sure you get paid again. Did that answer your question?
Find your people.
You have to find a common vocabulary among your collaborators, and that usually is referencing other things you've seen, talking about intention, like Harry was saying, and once you establish that relationship, it's a wonderful thing when you can work with somebody over and over and get a shorthand going, and then it's really great.
Yeah.
All right, next question. So what does the future of filmmaking look like for you in each of your roles? How do you think your role is going to evolve now in this next stage?
How much time we got?
Not much, so.
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, me? Oh, okay. Well, I think in the next 5 years, the DPs won't exist anymore. I think the role of the DP is slowly being whittled away. And part of the reason is because of the technology that's available. Back in the early day of when HD was just starting and I was doing the work with Sony, everyone started talking about having a category called DIT. And I fought against that. I said, no, that's a video engineer. And I came up through television when we switched to ENG. The video engineers drove me crazy, because they would always say that you can't put it to air like that. And I'd say, well, it looks good, that's how it's going to air.
Yeah, it's not in the scope. The scope is like, you're off the scope.
What was I saying?
Well, you were saying that your job is like doomed.
Oh, yeah. So, when I talk about DPs not existing, I get nervous. So,
You black out a little bit.
but what tends to be happening is DPs we've shot ourselves in the foot a little bit. Because once upon a time, making a movie was a little bit of magic. You know, you shot on film, and people would say to me, God, you must get so excited when you see dailies. And I go, well, no. Why would I get excited? And they go, well, you know, don't you get excited when you see that it turned out and everything? You go, well, no, I knew what it was going to look like because that's what I shot. So I'd go into it knowing exactly where I was going. But now we've sort of gotten away from using light meters. We've got away from the magic on set. There's huge high definition monitors that everyone's looking at, so everyone can see the image. We've got operators who operate the camera. We've got assistants who pull focus. We've got a gaffer who lights the set. We've got grips who move all the equipment around. And we've got a DIT who's manipulating the image. And I've heard young producers on set saying, you know, what does that guy do? And they don't understand that what that guy's done is sat down with this guy and worked out how he's going to tell the story.
Well, see, this is where I'm going to disagree with you, because I don't think the world of narrative storytelling can exist without a cinematographer, because I'm a writer-director. I don't know diddly about how to get an image on digital or film.
That's right.
And it's not my job, and I don't want to have to do it. But I also don't want to have to talk to, and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, I don't want to talk to a technician and just say, get this, you know, light it like this or whatever. First of all, I don't know. I'm relying on Rob during production and then Harry in post to bring their artistry to it. It's like Rob was saying, it's a collaboration. And so for me to be a storyteller and just have a bunch of technicians, and again, I'm not saying that in a negative way, I'm just saying I need the artistry of people who have developed that skill set. Rob may not even have to pick up a camera while I'm shooting or while we're doing a movie, but he knows exactly what to tell the lighting director, the gaffer, or I don't have to tell Harry, you know, make the cut here or actually physically do this with the image. He already knows and brings so much to it. There were a couple of scenes in Dune, when we were doing Dune, and I called Harry after the shoot and I said, Harry, I shot a lot of stuff and I think I got what I want, but I have no idea how this scene is going to cut together. I don't know whether it will cut together. It might be total crap. And I would walk into the editing room and he would have a scene that was coherent, it was beautifully cut, it was beautifully paced, and then I would go in and I'd say, all right, well, we got to change this, this, and this, but but it was beautifully done, and I would not have been able to do that just by having somebody who was what we call a cutter. So I don't think these roles can be easily, no matter what the producers want. Now there is the business side of it, which they may say, well, we don't want to pay for it, or we want to do it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But the artistry of these roles is, you can't get rid of it.
Let me qualify saying DPs won't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, will DPs exist in their current role? Probably not. Will they still interact with the director? Yes, I think they will.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing is I'm seeing DPs slowly pushed out of the picture. I'm seeing that on set, and I'm seeing it with producers. And so really what I'm saying is anyone who's a cinematographer needs to be really careful that you protect your role and you don't make it look like you're on set doing nothing, because it's really easy for a cinematographer to look like he's just walking around, you know,
Sitting at Video Village. And
yeah, doing nothing. And one of the things that I tell all cinematographers is, whatever you do, make sure you use a light meter. At least walk around the set with a light meter, because if you walk around with a light meter, it looks like you're doing something. I mean, I use a light meter all the time, so it's not a problem. But a lot of guys don't. They just light straight off the monitor and look at the waveform. And I've got to admit, you know, that's part of my light meter is the monitor and the waveform and the vector scope. But I still go out on set and I set my key light and most of the key ratios using a light meter. And I think it's important for producers, and I think it's important for the crew to see you doing that. So my thing about DPs not existing is, I think we've got to really be careful, because there is a chance and there is a trend for the DP to be slowly being pushed out of the picture.
Just for the sake of time, and that way we can get to like a couple questions. Go ahead.
Do you think a DP should operate? Do you like to operate?
I love operating, but to be honest, on all the shows I'm doing now, I don't have the time. You know, if I was operating now, I just couldn't shoot as fast as I can, and the especially on a show like Creepshow, you know, we're knocking out what 35, 40, 45 setups a day in 12 hours.
it's insane.
And that's single camera. You know, with two cameras, we're sometimes doing 80, 90 setups, you know, with two camera setups a day. And you don't have time. How many pages? What would a page going to be? 4 pages?
Oh, easily
4 or
easily
5,
4 pages. I mean,
6.
obviously it depends on the nature of the scene and whether there's special effects and so forth. And so, but there have been a couple of days where we did 11 pages a day.
Yeah,
And they were dialogue pages, and you know, but you have to bang through them. And this is the other aspect of all of this. It is a business, okay? And even if you're in independent filmmaking, you're constrained by budget and time. If you're in television, you're also constrained by budget and time, but you're also constrained by the dictates of the producers. It's a producer's medium. So you have to keep the business side of it in your mind. As a director, my job is equal parts creativity and production management. You know,
And that's the same with DP. You know, you're going along trying to create my turners all over the place, and at the same time, you've got the producer coming on saying, "Well, you've got 25 minutes to create 15 turners." You know.
yeah.
During the 90s, I operated everything I shot, and I love operating, and I hate having an operator because it's always just not exactly what I want. But there's just no way I could work fast enough to shoot for the especially on TV.
I'll take another question if somebody has one. Yep. Stand up.
I was gonna ask, in business, because it is a business, what parts of yourself did you value toward others, and what parts do you value in others? Does that make sense? Like, what parts of yourself did you market when you were starting to lift off the ground, and now being where you are, what do you look in other people?
Me?
Yeah.
How did you get started? How did you get your big first gig? Did you market yourself? Did you start calling different directors?
The film business is so random. I went to USC Film School, and I was really lucky that my first jobs were people from USC Film School that had gotten other jobs and said, "Hey, we need help doing this and doing this." And so I ended up working on a sound movie, so dependent on the kindness of strangers. There is no, for me, there is no marketing. There is no, I can't call anybody. I know of some projects that are potentially happening, but they know I'm here. So me calling them isn't gonna help.
Yeah, I can. One of the things that as a cinematographer is, to a certain extent, people assume at some point that you know what you're doing, that you know how to expose a shot, you know how to frame a shot, you know how to move the camera, you know how to choose lenses, all that sort of stuff. The thing that producers really want to know is, can you come in on budget and on schedule? That's the main thing. And so, in answer to your question, the thing that I used to really push to people was I can deliver feature film quality really fast. And during the 90s, I was pretty much the busiest DP in Hollywood. If there'd been three of me, I could have had all three of me working non-stop, every day of the year. And the reason was because the word spread around pretty quickly that I could deliver feature film quality on a TV budget and on a TV schedule. I didn't want to do TV, but I got really good at it. And so that was, the calls started coming in, and I was just working non-stop. And I think one year I did 8 movies in 1 year. And people, guys from the ASC were calling up and saying, "How the hell are you getting all this?" Because they thought I was doing something illegal. And but I used the same crew on every show I did between 1991 and 1999, exactly the same crew. And we just went from one show to another. It was like a circus. And we'd do a show and we'd have a few days off. We'd be on the next show, we'd do that, we'd have a few days off. But the reason I got all that work was purely because I marketed the fact that I could deliver feature film quality very, very fast.
But, in a similar sense, one of the selling points that I use for when I talk to a director or I talk to a producer, the happiest moment is when a director comes to me and says, "I can't believe how fast you are." And that's what I sell myself on. I am the fastest editor that you have ever worked with. I don't overthink it. I have a system where I get a cut, a first pass done really quickly, so the director can look at it and react to it, and they really like that. then when you start to recut it, I'm pretty fast at that too. So that is of anything that I can market myself with or hold myself in. They're better editors, but I don't think there's anybody faster. And
But that's also a tribute to your skill sets, right? I mean, and your practice, and same with you, Rob. I mean, you don't just get that just by being fast. You get that by knowing your craft so well that you can just execute.
yeah, you know what you want, you know what you like,
And you know how to do it.
And then when you're looking at dailies, my goal is to, what is the director like? What is he looking for? And that's what I deliver. And,
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. There will be a table right outside this hallway where they will be sitting, and you guys can continue this chat because it could go on for hours. So head out there, get a meet and greet, take some pics.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.